The rain had been falling since late afternoon, the kind that soaked through clothes and made the street shine under passing headlights. She walked slowly toward the small grocery store at the corner, counting coins in her hand. Every step felt heavy, not just because she was tired, but because she already knew the money would not be enough. It was always like this at the end of the week. She was a single mother, raising her young daughter alone in a small apartment above a closed tailor shop. Life had not turned out the way she once imagined, but she had learned not to complain. She worked long hours, cleaned houses on weekends, and still smiled when her daughter asked simple questions about the world. To her, that smile was worth more than rest. As she reached the store entrance, she noticed a man sitting near the wall, partly covered by a torn jacket. His shoes were wet and worn thin. A cardboard sign rested against his knee, the letters faded and uneven. He was not shouting or calling out like others sometimes did. He just sat there quietly, head lowered, hands resting his lap as rain splashed around him. She almost walked past him, not because she didn't care, but because caring hurt when you had nothing left to give. Still, something made her slow down. Maybe it was the way he avoided looking at people, or the calm way he sat in the cold, as if he had accepted it. When she stepped closer, her heart skipped. She stopped completely and looked again, this time more carefully. The face was thinner, the beard untrimmed, and the eyes tired, but there was no mistake. She knew him. He had once sat 2 rows ahead of her in school. Quiet, sharp, always finishing tests early. Teachers spoke highly of him. People said he would go far one day. She remembered borrowing a notebook from him once, and how neatly everything was written. She said his name softly, unsure she was right. He looked up quickly, surprise flashing across his face before he tried to hide it. His eyes met hers, and in that moment, she knew she had not imagined it. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The rain filled the silence between them. He was the first to look away. "You must be mistaken," he said, his voice low. "I don't think so," she replied gently. "It's been years, but I remember you." His shoulders stiffened. He gave a small, uncomfortable nod. "Yeah, it's me." She didn't ask the question that rushed into her mind. She didn't ask how this had happened, or where life had taken him. Instead, she crouched down slightly, so they were closer to eye level. "Are you hungry?" she asked. He hesitated, pride clearly fighting need. Then he nodded once. A little. She went inside the store. The warm air hit her face, and the smell of bread made her stomach tighten. She walked the aisles carefully, choosing the cheapest items. Bread, soup, a small packet of biscuits. She removed one thing, then added another, trying to balance kindness with reality. At the counter, she counted her coins again. The cashier watched without expression. When the total came up, she was short by a small amount. Without thinking too much, she put one item back. It would be fine. She would manage. Outside, she handed the bag to him. He looked inside, then up at her, clearly moved but trying not to show it. "Thank you," he said. "You didn't have to." "I know," she replied, "but I wanted to." They stood there awkwardly. Cars passed. People rushed by, wrapped in their own worries. "I never thought I'd see you like this," she said quietly. He gave a small, tired smile. "Life surprises you sometimes." She wanted to say more, but she sensed there were walls around him, carefully built. Instead, she told him where she lived, just in case he ever needed help. Not a promise, just an option. He shook his head. "I can't, but thank you." She nodded and turned to leave, but after a few steps, she looked back. He was already eating carefully, as if he didn't know when his next meal would come. That night, she couldn't sleep. His face kept coming back to her. The quiet way he sat in the rain, the way he avoided questions. Something about it didn't add up, but she pushed the thought away. People's lives could change in ways no one saw coming. Over the next few days, she saw him again and again, always near the same spot. Sometimes she brought food. Sometimes she just stopped to talk for a few minutes. He never asked for money. He never complained. Slowly, small details caught her attention. The way he spoke, careful and thoughtful. The way he watched people, like he was studying them. Once, She heard him correct someone about a business headline printed on a discarded newspaper. His knowledge didn't match his situation. One evening, the rain returned, heavier than before. Thunder rolled across the sky. She saw him shivering, his jacket soaked through. Without planning it, the words left her mouth. "You can come to my place tonight, just to get dry." He looked at her as if she had said something impossible. "I can't," he replied quickly. "It's just for the night," she said. No questions. No pressure. He hesitated for a long time. Then he looked down at his hands, wet and shaking. Finally, he nodded. As they walked together through the rain, she felt nervous but strangely calm. She didn't know why she trusted him, only that something deep inside told her he was not dangerous. She didn't know that this simple act would change both their lives forever. The walk to her apartment felt longer than usual. The rain had slowed, but the air was still cold and damp. She held her jacket tighter around herself while he walked a step behind her, carrying his small bag. Neither of them spoke much. The sound of their footsteps and distant traffic filled the silence. She kept reminding herself that this was just for one night. A warm place, dry clothes, nothing more. Still, her heart beat a little faster as she unlocked the door to the building. It wasn't fear exactly, just the weight of responsibility. When you were a single mother, every choice felt bigger than it should. The stairs creaked as they climbed. The hallway smelled faintly of old paint and soap. When she opened her apartment door, warm air rushed out. The light from the single bulb made the small space feel even smaller. A couch against one wall, a tiny kitchen, and a short hallway leading to the bedroom she shared with her daughter. Her daughter looked up from the floor where she was drawing. "Mom, you're late," she said, then noticed a man behind her. "This is someone I know from school," she said carefully. "He's staying for tonight because of the rain." Her daughter studied him with open curiosity. He smiled gently and gave a small wave. "Hello," he said. She nodded, then went back to her drawing, satisfied with the explanation. She offered him a towel and pointed to the bathroom. "You can clean up," she said. "I'll find something dry for you." When he came out, his hair was still damp, but his face looked different. Cleaner, younger somehow. She handed him an old sweatshirt and sweatpants that once belonged to her cousin. They fit well enough. "Thank you," he said again. He said it often, but never too much. They ate a simple dinner together. Soup and bread. Her daughter talked about school, about a drawing she was proud of. He listened closely, smiling, asking small questions. There was nothing strange or awkward about him. He felt calm, respectful. Later, when her daughter fell asleep, she spread a blanket on the couch for him. "You can take the bed," he said quickly. "I'm fine here." "This is fine," she replied. "It's only for one night." He nodded, but she noticed the way he sat on the edge of the couch, straight-backed, like someone used discipline. Before sleeping, he quietly folded his wet clothes and placed them neatly beside his bag. That night, she woke once to check the living room. He was asleep, hands folded on his chest, breathing slow and steady. She returned to bed, unsure why she felt relieved. Morning came early. She prepared breakfast before work. When she stepped into the living room, he was already awake, washing the few dishes from the night before. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I want to," he replied. "Over breakfast," she asked gently. "What happened to you?" He paused, spoon hovering over the bowl. "Life changed," he said simply. "Not always in good ways." She didn't push further. Everyone carried stories they weren't ready to tell. Before she left for work, she hesitated. "You can stay here today if you want. Just lock the door." "I won't be a burden," he said. "You're not," she replied, surprising herself with how sure she sounded. When she returned that evening, the apartment was clean. Too clean. The floor swept, the counter wiped. He had fixed a loose handle on the cabinet, without being asked. "You didn't need to do all this," she said. "I wanted to give something back," he replied. Over the next few days, the one night turned into 2, then 3. They spoke more, but still carefully. He never complained, never asked for more than food and a place to sleep. Sometimes she noticed him staring out the window, lost in thought. Other times, He sat with a newspaper someone had left downstairs, reading every page closely. One evening, she mentioned her worries about rent. Without thinking, he offered advice on budgeting. Speaking clearly and confidently, she paused, surprised by how well he understood numbers. "You're good at this," she said. He smiled faintly. "I used to be." Late one night, she heard him speaking softly on the phone outside. His words were calm but firm. She couldn't hear much, only that the conversation ended quickly. When he came back inside, she didn't ask. Still, questions filled her mind. He didn't act like someone broken by the streets. There was control in his movements, care in his words. He respected boundaries without being told. One afternoon, her daughter accidentally knocked his old phone off the table. It cracked slightly, and a screen flashed before going dark. She apologized, but he only smiled and said it was fine. She caught a glimpse of strange symbols and locked apps before he slipped it away. That night, she finally spoke. "You're not just someone who lost everything," she said quietly. He met her eyes, silent for a long moment. "I didn't lie to you," he said. "I just didn't tell you everything." She nodded slowly. "I didn't invite you here for answers. I invited you because you needed help." He exhaled, as if releasing something heavy. "Then I'm grateful." Outside, the rain began again, tapping softly against the window. She didn't know yet how deep his secrets went. She only knew that her small act of kindness had already changed the quiet rhythm of her life, and there was no turning back. By the time a week had passed, the small apartment felt different. It was still modest, cluttered in corners with clothes and toys, but there was a quiet rhythm now, a pattern that made the space feel alive. She noticed how he moved around without disturbing anything, how he respected her routines, how he sometimes paused just to watch her daughter laugh as she played. She had stopped thinking of this as temporary. He had become part of the daily life of their little home, without either of them saying out loud. Yet, questions kept bubbling up inside her. Who was he really? How could someone so sharp and careful end up on the streets? There was something in the way he carried himself, in the way he spoke to people on the phone. She could hear, when he thought she was busy, that suggested he was hiding more than he let on. One afternoon, as she was cooking, she noticed him sitting on the couch, looking at the stack of newspapers she had left on the table. Each page he turned, he read carefully, sometimes nodding slightly. He caught her watching and gave a small, knowing smile. "You read a lot," she said, trying to sound casual. "I like to know what's happening," he said softly, "even if the world isn't always fair." There was a pause, and she sensed he wasn't speaking about himself directly. Still, she felt the weight of his words, as if they carried experience beyond what he shared. Later that evening, she mentioned a small repair she had been putting off. Something as simple as tightening a loose door handle. When she returned from work, she found him already fixing it. She watched him work carefully, methodically, almost like he had done this countless times before. "You didn't have to do that," she said, a hint of surprise in her voice. "I wanted to help," he replied. "It makes sense to fix what you can, rather than wait for something worse." She realized she had never met anyone like him before. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't complain. He was precise, careful, and thoughtful in ways that were almost unsettling. She felt a mixture of admiration and confusion. One night, she found him standing by the window, watching the city lights. She hesitated before asking, "Do you ever want to talk about it? About why this happened?" He didn't turn to look at her immediately. Instead, he let out a quiet breath. "Some things aren't easy to explain," he said finally, "and some things aren't ready to be told." She nodded, understanding without judgment. Everyone had their reasons, and some reasons weren't meant for immediate sharing. She decided to respect that. Still, she noticed small things that didn't fit the picture of a man who had fallen through life's cracks. His knowledge of numbers, of the stock market, even of small financial matters, was unusual. She caught glimpses of him correcting mistakes in newspapers or quietly noting down details in a small notebook he kept tucked away. He didn't talk about money, yet he seemed fluent in its language. One morning, she found herself opening up about her own struggles. Rent, bills, the constant worry about whether she could make ends meet. She spoke softly, almost whispering, and he listened, not just listening, but absorbing every word, asking small questions that made her reflect on her choices and priorities. She realized that in some ways, he was smarter than anyone she had ever known. That evening, her daughter fell asleep early, leaving her alone in the living room with him. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the heater. She turned to him. "You don't have an answer if you don't want to," she said carefully, "but it feels like there's more to your story than I understand." He looked at her, the dim light casting shadows across his face. "There is," he admitted quietly, "but I can't share it yet. I have to be careful. Life has a way of punishing the wrong move." She didn't press him further. She simply nodded and made tea. They sat together in the silence, the sound of the rain tapping against the windows, letting the quiet fill the space. A few days later, something happened that made the puzzle pieces start to click together. Her daughter accidentally knocked his old phone off the small table near the couch. It landed screen side down, and a soft crack echoed in the room. When he picked it up, a strange screen lit up briefly. Symbols, encrypted folders, and applications she didn't recognize. "I'm sorry," her daughter said, feeling guilty. "It's fine," he replied, slipping the device into his bag. But she caught a glance at him staring at it with a mixture of concern and focus, something different from before. That night, she tried to speak about it. "I think I understand now," she said softly. "You're not just someone who lost everything. There's more behind this." He met her eyes, silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slightly. "You're right. There's more," he said, "but it's not the kind of story that helps anyone at this point. Not yet." She took a deep breath. "I didn't invite you here for explanations. I invited you because you needed help. That's all that matters." He exhaled, a small release, as if a weight had been lifted. "Then I am grateful," he said. Over the next few nights, she noticed a subtle shift in him. He relaxed slightly, let himself laugh at small things her daughter said, helping her with homework, joining in when they cooked simple meals together. There was still a quiet edge to him, but she could see that he was beginning to trust them, at least a little. The rhythm of the apartment settled into something comforting. Mornings filled with hurried breakfasts, evenings with quiet dinners, moment of laughter from her daughter, and the silent understanding that life had brought them together for reasons neither fully understood yet. She didn't know the details of his past, the secrets he carried, or the life he had left behind. She only knew that her small acts of kindness, sharing food, offering a warm place, were beginning to shape a bond neither had expected. And she realized, with a mixture of awe and caution, that the man who had appeared on the streets in the rain was not who he seemed. There was a story unfolding, one that would change all of their lives, and she was only just beginning to glimpse the edges of it. Days turned into a second week, and the apartment had become almost like a small sanctuary, a place where the world's pressures seemed to fade for a few hours each day. She went about her routines, work, cooking, helping her daughter with school, but she couldn't ignore the growing curiosity and quiet concern about him. There were so many pieces of the puzzle she didn't understand, and yet he seemed to navigate life with careful precision, as if he had survived challenges far beyond what anyone could imagine. One afternoon, a knock came at the door. She opened it to see a delivery man holding a package addressed to him. She hesitated, unsure what to do. He was sitting nearby, reading quietly, and when he looked up, his expression was calm but guarded. "That's mine," he said simply, taking the package with a nod. He didn't open it immediately, carrying it to the corner of the room and placing it down carefully. His attention returned to his reading, as if the package was a normal occurrence. Yet there was a subtle tension in the way he moved. That evening, after her daughter had gone to sleep, he finally opened it. Inside were documents, envelopes, and a small tablet device. He examined each piece with quiet focus, organizing them neatly. She watched from the doorway, a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Do you want to tell me what it all is?" she asked softly. He shook his head, eyes not leaving the table. "Not yet," he said. "Some of it is dangerous if misunderstood." She nodded. She understood the need for caution. Everyone had parts of their lives they couldn't reveal, especially when the consequences could affect more than just themselves. Over the next few days, she noticed more signs of his past life. He had an unusual understanding of business matters, a careful way of managing money, and an awareness of current events that went far beyond ordinary. He gave small, helpful tips when she mentioned struggles with bills or budgeting, but always in a quiet, respectful way, never asserting dominance or superiority. One evening, while he was fixing a small leak under the kitchen sink, she asked again gently, "Why? Why did it happen? How did you end up like this?" He paused, looking at the pipe, then finally up at her. "I had to disappear," he said softly. "Some people wanted me gone. It was the only way to stay safe." She took a deep breath, trying to process the words. "Disappear? Like hide?" He nodded slightly. "Yes, it wasn't about money or comfort. It was about survival. Some people in power didn't like the decisions I was making. I had to step away, pretend nothing mattered, pretend I was someone else." She sat down, her mind racing. She had always imagined that losing everything meant misfortune or mistakes. But this was different. This was choice. Calculated. A life carefully dismantled to protect himself from threats she could hardly understand. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes tired but steady. "Because even if I wanted to, few would understand. And if the wrong people knew I was around, you would have been at risk too. I couldn't bring danger here." Her heart skipped. The idea that her small act of kindness could have been dangerous was almost too much to bear. She realized how brave he had been, not only to survive alone, but to trust her enough to accept shelter in her home. That night, they sat together quietly. She made tea, and he accepted it, holding a warm cup between his hands, as if it anchored him to something normal. They didn't speak much. Words weren't necessary. She felt a profound respect for him growing with every passing moment. Over the next few days, small glimpses of his former life began to emerge in subtle ways. He corrected an error in a local news article, explained a complex financial term when she mentioned a story she read online. And once, she noticed a formal-looking envelope addressed to him tucked away in a drawer he never opened when she was around. It all painted a picture of a life far removed from the streets and rain. One evening, as she was helping her daughter with homework, he quietly approached with a stack of old notebooks. He placed them on the table and opened one. Inside were detailed notes, sketches, calculations, clearly from someone used to planning, analyzing, and organizing at a high level. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked softly. "Because it's part of who I am," he said. "And I want you to know that not everything you see is the whole story." She nodded slowly. She didn't need to know every detail. She understood that people were layered, that survival sometimes required secrecy, and that trust was earned, not demanded. Then came a night that changed the atmosphere completely. A phone call came in unexpected, and he answered it with a seriousness she had never heard in his voice. She couldn't hear the other side, only his responses. Short, calm, controlled. When he hung up, his face was tense. "They found me," he said quietly, almost himself. Her stomach sank. "Who?" "People who didn't want me to succeed," he said. "I thought I had stepped away, but sometimes the past catches up." Her mind raced. She realized that the safety of their small home was fragile. The choice to help him had opened her world to dangers she couldn't fully comprehend. Yet, despite the fear, she felt an unwavering resolve. She would not turn him away. Not now. For the first time, he looked truly vulnerable in front of her. He wasn't pretending. He wasn't guarded. He was aware of threats that she couldn't see, and yet he trusted her enough to share a piece of that reality. She felt a deep connection, a bond that went beyond ordinary friendship or kindness. The following morning, he made a decision. He spoke calmly but firmly. "I need to take action soon. I can't stay hidden forever, but I won't leave without ensuring you and your daughter are safe." She nodded, understanding that life was about to change. "We'll face it together," she said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. Over the next hours, they began preparing. She didn't ask questions. He didn't give unnecessary explanations. They moved quietly, with purpose, protecting their routine, keeping her daughter's life as normal as possible. Each small task, from securing doors to organizing supplies, was done with care, almost like rehearsing for something larger than either of them had faced before. By nightfall, he looked at her with a mixture of gratitude and concern. "Thank you," he said softly. "For trusting me, for helping me. It means more than you know." She smiled faintly. "It's not about knowing. It's about doing what's right." They shared a quiet moment. The room filled with the sound of rain again tapping softly against the windows. The storm outside mirrored the uncertainty of what was to come. Yet inside, there was a fragile calm, a sense of unity against the unknown. In those hours, she realized something profound. This man, who had appeared to be just a homeless stranger, was far more than she had ever imagined. And she, in turn, had shown him something he hadn't expected. Trust, compassion, and a place where he could simply exist without danger, judgment, or pressure. The night ended with no dramatic confrontation, no sudden revelations. Only quiet preparation, reflection, and an understanding that the coming days would bring change. He would confront the past. She would stand by him, and together, they would navigate the challenges that awaited. Their lives were about to shift, and though the details were unknown, one truth was clear. The bond formed in kindness and trust could weather storms that nothing else could. The next morning, the sun rose slowly, filtering through the thin curtains of the small apartment. She watched her daughter playing quietly on the floor, and for a moment, everything seemed ordinary, peaceful. But she knew that change was coming. The man who had quietly stepped into their lives was no longer just a stranger. His past, long hidden, was about to catch up, and there was no turning back. He moved around the apartment with a calm but deliberate energy. There was purpose in every gesture, a quiet confidence that had always been there, but now carried a sense of urgency. He spoke less than usual, focusing on preparations, making sure small tasks were done before leaving. She watched him, curiosity mixing with concern. She wanted to understand more, but she also trusted that he would share when the time was right. Later that morning, he finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "I can't stay hidden any longer," he said. "The people I left behind, they've found me. I have to confront them, or it won't end." She nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of his words. "Will it be dangerous?" she asked. "It could be," he admitted. "But I won't let anyone here be hurt. That includes you and your daughter." Her heart tightened, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had learned over the past weeks that he was careful, intelligent, and deliberate. If anyone could handle this, it was him, and she would stand by him as much as she could. The afternoon passed in a tense quiet. He gathered documents, small devices, and personal items, placing them carefully in a backpack. Every action seemed calculated, precise. She noticed the subtle way he checked the locks on the doors and windows, the way he glanced at the street outside, and she realized that this was more than a simple visit from someone in the past. It was a reckoning. Finally, he turned to her, his expression softer now. "I need to tell you everything," he said. "Not just bits and pieces. You deserve to know who I really am." She listened closely as he began to speak, revealing a life she could never have imagined. He was not just someone who had fallen on hard times. He was a billionaire, someone who had built a successful business empire, who had been forced into hiding after uncovering corruption that powerful people wanted to bury. Disappearing onto the streets was his only option to survive without endangering anyone. She sat quietly, absorbing each word, amazed at the depth and complexity of his life. It explained so much: the knowledge, the careful movements, the disciplined habits, the quiet way he had observed the world around him. And yet, it didn't change her perception of him. If anything, it deepened her respect. The man who had appeared homeless and broken was the same man she had come to trust, just with a story far bigger than she had ever imagined. After he finished, there was silence. She realized that all along, she had been helping someone who could have had everything at any time, but chose to live among uncertainty, humility, and survival. It was a lesson in character, in the true measure of a person beyond wealth or status. Over the next few days, they began to take action. He contacted a small circle of trusted associates, carefully navigating a path to reclaim control without endangering them. She helped in small ways, keeping routine steady for her daughter, ensuring that their lives felt normal despite the tension building in the background. Then came the day when he had to step fully back into the world he had left behind. The confrontation was not violent. It was calculated, strategic. He exposed corruption, reclaimed his company, and secured his position. The world saw the man who had vanished suddenly return, but few understood the quiet months spent in a small apartment, learning the true value of trust and human kindness. When he returned home that evening, everything had changed, yet the apartment felt the same. He was no longer a man pretending to be homeless. He was himself again, confident, powerful, but still the same person who quietly respected routines, helped with small chores, and laughed at a child's stories. He knelt to speak with her daughter, giving a small, warm smile. "Thank you for letting me be part of your life," he said, "even for a little while." She watched him, a mixture of awe and relief. "You don't have to thank me," she replied. "You were always welcome, and you still are." In the following weeks, he offered her support, financial stability she had never imagined, and opportunities that could transform their lives. But she accepted on her terms, insisting on maintaining dignity and independence. He respected her choices, showing that true generosity was about empowerment, not charity. As the story unfolded in public, many were surprised by his return, but those who mattered most knew the truth. The lessons learned, the trust built, and the quiet bond formed in a small apartment during rainy nights. That bond was not about money, power, or status. It was about human connection, trust, and the willingness to help someone in need without expecting anything in return. One quiet evening, as the rain tapped lightly against the windows, she realized how much they had both grown. He had rediscovered trust, humility, and the meaning of loyalty. She had learned courage, compassion, and the strength of helping someone without judgment. Their lives had changed dramatically. Yet in the small moments, the laughter, the routines, the quiet conversations, they found something enduring. The man who had once sat on the streets, unknown and vulnerable, had become a symbol of resilience and integrity. The single mother, who had offered warmth and kindness when she had little to give, had proven that true generosity came from the heart, not wealth. In the end, it was not the riches, the power, or the public recognition that mattered. It was the simple acts, the shared meals, the quiet conversations, the protection offered without hesitation, that shaped the future and bound their lives together. And as they sat together in the softly lit apartment, watching the rain, both understood that real wealth was found not in possessions, but in trust, compassion, and the courage to help another human being when they needed it most.